But for now, let's talk about nutrition. So I thought this would be a good one to go into today, especially now we're into February, now we're into the year a little bit. How do we feel like we're doing so far? Are we happy with the year so far? Sometimes I get, okay, so this is what I'm saying, we get kind of like this. Who is happy, and have you made any adjustments recently that you're happy with, or anything at all? You're happy? Just nutrition-wise, or generally?
I wasn't very well over Christmas with some sort of virus.
Got you.
Which meant I lost my appetite completely. And then it's come back, but
Okay.
I'm more sort of in control than I was before.
Okay. Okay.
Probably because I've had weeks of not having like anything
Yeah.
sugary or anything like that.
Yeah, that makes sense. Your palate has like reset,
Yeah.
almost. Okay.
So it's been easier to...
Well, I'm glad you're doing better. Nice. Anybody else, or is anybody else not as happy currently, and do you have anything to...
Sorry. I'm not sure what's happening with me. Christmas was okay. I didn't buy sweet things is my downfall. So I didn't buy any
Okay.
sweets, you know, that kind of thing. But since then, I've just got back and craving chocolate.
I understand that.
The rest of the diet's kind of okay, and in terms of ingredients, I'm looking at them. And,
Nice.
but then stopping off at the shop and just getting chocolate.
Is it like more of a compulsion than a...
Almost.
Okay. 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 All right. Well, we'll talk about that a little bit today. Anybody else, anything to report?
We've got a new Greek baker's that's opened in Chelmsford. Yes, on Baddow Road. And unfortunately, we've had a bit of pavlova, things like good beers and all the nice Greek stuff. It's great being able to get it here,
Yeah.
not having to go into London for it. And that's triggered terrible sweet cravings.
I can understand that too. Especially when it's something that maybe you haven't had for a while, or it's not been as accessible, and then suddenly it's right there.
On our doorstep.
No, I get that. I get that. Well, however you're feeling currently about your diet or your health generally, hopefully today will give you something to think about. And at the end of the day, I definitely don't want anybody to feel bad. Because your diet is going to change all the time. You're going to have ups and downs, and you're going to feel better and worse. But ultimately, if you can be more objective about your diet and about the things that you want to do differently, that's the best way of moving forward. Because then you can say, okay, this, and this, great, I can feel good about that. This, and this, I want to maybe make some adjustments there. And that doesn't mean that I'm bad or it's a reflection on me, but I just need to make the changes because I know what the outcome will be potentially if I don't. So it's balancing the changes and the necessity with the appreciating that I'm human and this is the way that we eat a lot of the time, So with that in mind though, to begin with, when I say a healthy diet, what is it that comes to mind?
Varied diet.
Oh, sorry, say again?
A
A varied
varied diet.
diet, nice. Yeah, absolutely. All food groups. I like that. Anybody else? 5 a day. Yeah, your fruit and veg. Anything else? Small portions, or maybe at least smaller portions potentially, depending on what your goals are. Yeah. For me, my answer is a combination of understanding and balance. Balance because, like you said, like all food groups are not only, included, but necessary. And because, well, in reality, we've still got a life to live. We've still got the enjoyment factor that we're trying to get from the food. And if you're not enjoying the food, what's the point? I want you to be healthier, but I don't want you to be miserable. Sometimes I'll have people come into a session and they'll say, oh, I'm doing X, Y, and Z. And I'll say, nice, how are you enjoying it? Oh, I hate it. It's miserable, it's boring. Fine, but how long is that gonna last? And if it does last, how enjoyable is that experience, So, and then the other side is understanding. If you understand and you remember consciously, if I eat too much of this, this is the outcome. Or if I don't eat enough of this, this is the outcome. Then that plays on your mind a little bit. Not to say that you should fret, but just to say that you're going to think about it a little bit more. And then when you think about it, that can help you make a different decision. So with that in mind, has anything else sprung to mind when you think of a healthy diet or a diet generally? Okay. So I personally believe that there are no bad foods, only bad relationships with food. So the food itself isn't bad. I suppose you can make the same analogy when it comes to like weapons. You know, a gun itself is not inherently dangerous, but when you use it, that's when it becomes a problem, right? Food, it's the same thing. That sugar isn't inherently bad, it's just energy in its purest form, but we can eat too much of it. Same with certain types of fats, same with salt, for example. It's all about how much I'm having and my relationship with it. I, for one, really do love salty food. But my family also has a love for salty food, but also high blood pressure. So I need to understand that my relationship with salty food maybe is different from somebody who doesn't have that family history of it. In the session that I did on Wednesday, we were talking about that specific element, like salt and blood pressure. And somebody mentioned that they know somebody who puts salt on absolutely everything, who they just have the saltiest diet, and yet they don't have high blood pressure. But some people are just God's favorite. My family is clearly, in that regard, not on that list. So I just need to be aware of that in the future when it comes to my own salt intake. With that in mind, do any of you feel like there are certain foods that you do have a poorer relationship with? And it doesn't necessarily mean bad, but you know, your example of the compelling feeling to go and buy the chocolate, that's an example of my relationship with the food rather than the food itself. You know, and again, not to say that that's bad or good or anything, but just to get you thinking, you know.
I think it's fine trying to find the discipline and also to accept, like you're saying about you can't eat as much salt as maybe someone else can. It's accepting, okay.
Yeah, these are my limits.
Like this, but it is, and it's sort of taking control over it. And I think sort of my difficulty is I know which foods are good for me and I know which ones are bad, but I can't develop my taste buds. I hate nuts, and I eat nuts every day now.
Right.
I know they're good for me, and I'm waiting to suddenly
Click.
enjoy them.
Yeah.
And I don't, so I have to kind of reframe it. Okay, my pleasure's not coming from eating them. My pleasure's coming from knowing that I put something good into my body.
Yeah, that's good though.
But it's that control, and I think that discipline. That's really, I think that is really challenging.
Yeah, and I think,
Options.
agreed, and I think you hit it right on the head. The discipline part of it is the most difficult part. So I had an interesting conversation with someone recently. We talked about the difference between motivation and discipline. In my head, this is the distinction. Motivation is what we want. Discipline is what we do. And so if you can be motivated and disciplined, great. But there are days when you are motivated, but you're not disciplined, because you want to do the thing, but whether we do the thing is a different story. And then there are days when you're disciplined, but you're not motivated. Like you can't be asked, you can't be bothered, but you're still going to do X, Y, and Z because you're disciplined. So I think building up that, I don't know, tolerance, I suppose, or that skill is important. So let's get into it. First one, if this wants to work. Brilliant. Carbohydrates. So we're going to go through each food group, starting with carbohydrates. Carbohydrates is a big one because, well, you tell me, the typical sentiment towards carbohydrates, do we think of it as positive or negative a lot of the time? Negative. You know, if we say carbohydrates, a lot of the time people kind of shy away a little bit, especially when we're talking about diet culture. Carbohydrates are often, not always, but often the first to go. Ketogenic diet, Atkins diet, low carb diet, no carb diet, you name it, carbohydrates are on the chopping block a lot of the time. Now, in fairness, a lot of nutritionists, a lot of people say that we don't need carbohydrates. And to an extent, that is true because your body can create energy and can use other sources of food as energy. However, have any of you tried to cut out carbohydrates entirely? And how did you find it?
I do it for Len.
Okay.
6 weeks.
Okay, got you.
But I can't do it the rest of the year.
When you're doing it for Lent, is it easy because you know it's going to come to an end?
Yeah.
Okay. But how do you feel physically during that duration? Do you feel different? Do you feel better, worse? Interesting. So some people feel fine without carbohydrates. Other people really feel the effects. Like I, for one, feel very sluggish if I'm not eating carbohydrates. And the longer I'm not eating them for, the more sluggish I tend to feel. So it does depend on you as a person. But when we're talking about carbohydrates, we're talking about all starchy and sugary foods, or all foods that contain one or the other or both. So, you know, that can be your cakes and your biscuits and your cereal, but also your bread and your rice and your pasta, nuts, seeds, certain vegetables. All of those contain either starch or sugar or a combination of both. And we could be talking about added sugar, we could be talking about natural sugar that's already in the fruit or the honey and stuff like that. But not all carbohydrates are made equally. Why do I say that?
Some have probably got more sugar in them than others.
Sugar, potentially, so some might have more sugar in than others. Fibre is another one.
Salt.
Salt might be another one. Yeah, so essentially what we're looking at is the difference in what the carbohydrate actually contains, because that will have an impact on a number of different things, one of which is, you tell me actually, blood sugar. Now, do you remember there's a term to describe how much a carbohydrate or a food will affect your blood sugar? Do you remember what that term is?
Glycemic.
Glycemic index. This is not working. I think I need a new battery. So, glycemic index. Glycemic index is a measure of how much particular foods will affect your blood sugar. Now, the cool thing about this concept is that you can use it to not only control your blood sugar, but also to control your energy levels. A lot of the time, the people I work with, not only might they have health issues, you know, like being pre-diabetic or high cholesterol or stuff like that, but on a daily basis, you know, you want to be able to function, right? You want your body to work well, you want to have enough energy, you want to feel clear-headed. And I think if you can understand this concept better and apply it, you too will feel more energetic, more productive, more all of that stuff, right? So we've got higher GI foods and we've got lower GI foods. Higher GI foods typically affect blood sugar more and quicker. So you see this bigger spike, but you also then see a bigger drop. If we're talking about energy, what will that look like for a person? More tired, well, at least afterwards more tired. Beforehand, you know, let's say you know, it's 9 o'clock and then at 9:30 or 9:15 or whatever, I've got suddenly a big burst in energy. I feel really good, but then very quickly afterwards, I experience the drop, the slump. That might translate to, you know, you needing a nap. That might translate to you kind of flopping on the sofa for an hour. It could be anything. Whereas lower GI foods typically tend to give us more stability, and as a result, give us more energy over time. The really important part about this to consider is that, well, let's say you've got a busy day today. It's 9 in the morning, you are about to leave your house, and after you leave your house, you aren't going to be able to eat anything for 4 or 5 hours, maybe more. The best thing you can do is to consider this and start to have more of these lower GI foods, or maybe try to reduce the GI of what you're eating to get more fuel out of that food. How many of you, let's say you eat breakfast and then within an hour or two you could probably eat again? Or maybe you've had that in the past. This is not getting out. This whole time we've been talking, trying to change the battery at the same time. There we go. Do any of you feel like this is something that you could apply yourselves to get more energy out of the food that you're eating?
How do you know what's low and high GI?
We're going to look at some different classifications.
And how is it literally on the day? So, you know, could you kind of tailor it? Oh, I've got a busy day today, so I'm going to specifically address this.
Yeah?
I know obviously consistency would be better, but yeah, I was wondering if I could kind of tailor it.
You definitely could. You definitely could. And It's also dependent on the type of activity that you're doing. So for example, if I'm going to the gym or if I'm going to like a training session, I like to make sure that 2 hours before I'm training or 3 hours before I'm training, I've eaten enough to sustain me throughout the session. But then maybe half an hour before the session, I'll eat something like a banana or something maybe a little bit sugarier to bring my blood sugar up so that when I start exercising, I'm already, like I've got energy in the tank. Whereas if I know that I'm not going to eat anything for that 4 or 5 hours, but I need the consistency, that spike probably won't be very helpful for me. Instead, I need that stability. So yeah, I guess it just depends on what you've got that day.
I just kind of like go for like every
Yeah.
day the same, but obviously not every day.
Yeah. Or you know, for example, I was going out for a meal last week or the week before, and I knew that I wasn't going to eat for an hour and a half, but I was very hungry then, and I knew that had I not eaten then, I would have wanted to eat even more later. So I decided to eat something now, but I wanted to eat something that was going to digest quickly, so that by the time I ate later, my stomach was empty. So I ate something, I can't remember what I ate, let's say it was a piece of toast or something like that. Whereas if I had eaten the handful of nuts and the fruit and the whatever, that would have been digesting still probably by the time I ate dinner. So it's when you get into that side of things, like the practical application, I think it's really fascinating. So with that, we're starting to look for foods which will impact us better and help us with our blood sugar and all of this, right? These are some examples of lower GI foods. Now, not all of them, I should say, are low GI, but they are lower in comparison to what I've got on the other page, right? So we've got fruits, you know, I've got my berries, my pomegranate, my plums, my citrus fruits, things like that. Whereas on the other page, I've got more my pineapple, my melon, my grapes, the riper banana particularly. On this side, I've got things like milk and cream cheese, all of the dairy products, typically a lower GI, as long as they don't have sugar added to it. There are also dairy alternatives. So the almond milk, the soy milk, and the coconut milk, all are lower GI, whereas the rice milk and the oat milk are typically higher GI. So a lot of people swap out regular milk for oat milk, and I have this conversation quite frequently. But actually, oat milk typically affects blood sugar a decent amount. So then I end up switching the regular milk for the oat milk. Well, actually, maybe the regular milk was better for my blood sugar. Not to say that there aren't benefits to it, but you know what I mean. We've got the brown, wild, and basmati rice. We've also got the seeded wholemeal bread, the sourdough bread, the rye, the wholemeal pasta, the whole grain oats. Those ones typically have a lot more fiber, protein, healthy fat. Whereas on this one, we've got more the white bread, the white pasta, the white rice, the processed rice, the instant cereal the instant oats, stuff like that. Typically, these have been stripped of those nutrients that we were just talking about, the fiber, the fat, the protein. That is really the main reason as to why these foods affect blood sugar more on average than these ones. The composition of the carbohydrate itself. So if I have more carbohydrates, just carbohydrates typically digest quicker than your protein, fat, and fiber. So because of that, it's going to digest quicker, and then it's going to end up going into my bloodstream quicker. Whereas if inside of that carbohydrate, we also have an abundance of protein and fat and fiber, it digests slower, which means instead of going like this, it goes, you know what I mean? And that is now going into my bloodstream at a lower rate, and less is going into my bloodstream. That means, again, I'm going to get more of that stable kind of curve rather than the big spike and drop, and I'm going to be able to prolong my energy levels just by making that simple little change. So if you were to go and start having some of these instead of some of those, it wouldn't have to be all of it either. You could just make a couple of little adjustments. I always typically recommend to make the adjustments to the staples of your diet, the things that you have frequently. You know, so For example, do any of you have a staple of your diet that you could probably switch from the high to the low? Things that you have every day. The bread, the rice, the pasta, the sauce, the sweets, the chocolate, whatever it may be. There could be a version of that which, if I swapped it, I could still have it every day, but I'd be benefiting from having the slightly better version. So, you know, in your case, it could be the darker chocolate rather than the milk chocolate. That way I can still enjoy myself, but feel good about the change, you know, that I've made. Anybody else? Any examples?
Well, the porridge, I have the whole milk porridge.
Nice.
The oat porridge, opposed to the white
Mm-hmm.
porridge, I have the whole milk.
Nice. So that's a good example. So instead of having like the instant,
Yeah.
you know, the pot one, yeah. Nice. So really good example. Nice. What was yours?
Well, you have a lot of vegetables, but none of the vegetables that I eat, which is cauliflower, sprouts, carrots, leek. So where do they come on your pecking order?
Those will all be on the lower end.
Are they?
Yeah, all on the lower end. So those are like really good ones to keep in place.
One good and bad list, isn't it?
You could, yeah.
Black hat and the other one's got white.
You could put it that way. Well, the thing is, I never want to class it as good and bad, just because as much as these foods will typically affect my blood sugar more than some of the ones on the other page, the potatoes, they have their benefits, the parsnips, the pumpkin, the veg, you know, there are benefits to these foods, but maybe in the long run, I want to make a couple of adjustments, and that's okay.
I'm a bit confused by your rice.
Yeah.
Because you say the basmati rice, which is the rice I had, but I have it microwaved. And that's the
Okay.
microwave rice.
That's a good point. So that one I'm not too sure. It might be a bit better because it's basmati, and then maybe not quite as good because it's microwave, but at least you're having the microwave basmati over the microwave regular white rice. So that could be something to think about. If you're concerned at all, look at the label and then just compare the basmati one with the regular white one. You might find that if the basmati has more fibre, that it's still a better option. So that could be cool. So with this in mind, we could then say, okay, I'm going to swap X for Z and this for that, and that's the only thing that I'm going to do. And I know that if I'm consistent, that will benefit me. So I don't need to make extreme changes. That's just those little bits and pieces.
I'm surprised at the fruits because I always add fruits to my breakfast. I didn't realise they were different GI.
Yeah. So that's another really good thing. So for breakfast, you know, if I went from having, let's say, the melon and the grapes every single day, and I switched that to having melon and blueberries, that could be a switch because now the average GI of that meal has gone down, if that makes sense.
Yeah.
That brings me to this point, which is that we can start to adjust the GI of a meal or a snack based on the alterations we make to it. So yes, you could switch out this food for that food, you know, the white rice for the brown rice, but not everybody enjoys the brown rice. And like I said, I want you to enjoy the food that you're having, ideally. So, and I'm one of those people. I don't really love brown rice, but I like white rice, right? So there are some things we could do. Firstly, variety. If I were to have a plate, let's just say I've got a bowl of rice right here, white rice. This will affect my blood sugar this much. If I were to add some beans and broccoli and chicken, maybe some avocado, I've now added a bunch of protein, fat, and fiber. And because I've added all of those nutrients, that meal, that bowl, will now affect my blood sugar less. So immediately what you could start doing is you could say, okay, I have been having this cereal for breakfast, or I've been having the instant porridge. I quite like the instant porridge, plus it's convenient. So what I'm going to do is instead of eradicate it, I'm going to start adding a bit of extra to it. Maybe I'll add some nuts to it. Maybe I'll add some seeds to it. Maybe I'll put some blueberries in it. Maybe you get the idea, right? That could be a way of adjusting that meal so that you can keep the convenience and the enjoyment, but improve it even slightly. And I like that because it's a functional tip, like it's practical. Timing. Does anybody remember, if you've heard me say this, anybody remember what the advice is here?
I thought you after 7, I know.
Okay.
Try not to eat after 7.
Okay, so that's something you could think about is like, when am I going to stop eating? And that can be helpful for sleep. But particularly for blood sugar, do you remember?
Eating regularly every, say, 4 hours.
Okay, that's another thing you can think about. Yeah, how regularly you're eating. Because if you haven't eaten for, a really long stretch of time, you might eat more than you need to, something to think about. But with this one, with timing, it's all about the order that we're eating things, right? So for example, if my stomach is empty, completely empty, and the first thing that I'm eating, let's say, is some white toast and jam, right? I'm having that for breakfast. That will affect my blood sugar far more than if I were to have eaten a couple boiled eggs and some avocado first. Because then now I've got in my system some protein and fat. Does that make sense? Or the example that I've always given, so you've heard me say this, I imagine, but you walk into your kitchen, you've got a cake waiting for you, it's calling your name. If you eat that now on an empty stomach, it will affect your blood sugar more than if you were to wait and have that cake for dessert. Because you wait, if you've eaten your meal and then 10 minutes later or whatever, you eat that cake, now it's going to get in line behind the food that is currently already digesting, which means that digestion is going to occur slower. Whereas I eat that on an empty stomach, my body's like, whew, yes. So that's something you could consider. To add to that, so you could do that, breakfast, you could do that with dessert, you could do that with the order of the food itself. So you've got a plate of food in front of you, you eat the you eat the vegetables first, then the chicken, and then you eat the rice. Now suddenly that rice, again, is going in after. So that's another thing that you could think about. Thirdly, preparation. Does anybody remember any of the advice from the preparation part?
I wanted to ask, when we were doing the course, you talked about, say, cooking rice or potatoes and rinsing it, putting it in the fridge and then heating it up. Does that apply?
That's exactly that. That's the preparation.
Oh, right.
That's right. So 2 things we can think about. A is rinsing. If you're making rice and you rinse some of the starch off before you even start, you're already benefiting because you're rinsing away some of the starch that would have ultimately been converted into sugar. So that's one thing we can do. You can also rinse it, you can rinse the potatoes and the pasta after you've cooked it. You can rinse the rice before and after you've cooked it. Both of those work really well. Another thing you could consider is allowing the carbohydrates to cool down. So if you're making rice, pasta, or potatoes, you cook it and then you let it cool down. The starch inside it actually changes because it's cooling down and becomes resistant starch, which does not become digested and become glucose the way that regular starch does. So with that in mind, tonight, let's say you're having a spag bowl. You could include all of these tips tonight and make that meal so much better for you, even though you've really not changed all that much. I could switch out the pasta. I could have brown pasta instead of white pasta if I wanted to. But if you don't love brown pasta, what you could do is you could cook it and then let it cool down. You could even rinse off some of the extra starch. Now suddenly that white pasta is going to do you better now than when it was fresh, like fresh off the stove. I could look at the timing, so that cake that I would have eaten in the afternoon, I'm gonna wait, I'm gonna have that for dessert. And I can look at the variety. Now I'm gonna add some extra vegetables, I'm gonna add some beans maybe, some lentils to thicken it up. And now that meal has so much more fiber, fat, and protein. So there's loads of things that you can do to make the meal better. You don't just need to eradicate foods. And to me, that's really cool because it means that you've now got more freedom rather than restriction. And I think that makes it easier. What do you think about this? Wait, sorry, you go first. What did you say?
I've been doing quite a lot of that sort of
Nice.
thing, and I think there's a risk of you keep adding stuff because you think it's healthy, and then you end up with a massive plate,
That's a good point.
and you can then put on weight.
That's a very good point.
Especially like nuts and seeds, as opposed to
Yeah.
I was eating loads and loads of them, and they're very nutrient.
That's true. That's a very good point. So considering the portion size still and the composition. Yeah, absolutely. So yeah, especially you're right, if I'm adding the nuts, the seeds, the avocado, the healthy fats, which will do me good. But yeah, I wanna be aware of that. That's very true. Alison, what was your point?
Fruits though is fascinating. I can't believe I just didn't, it never occurred to me, like,
Nice.
that order of eating things. And I just think eating out is often the most difficult thing because obviously you can control more what's in your own cupboards at home than you can when you go to a restaurant. So that's really good.
Nice, yeah. And what's cool is that, you know, let's say this evening you're going out for a meal, but you're going out for a late meal. And you know that if your blood sugar is too high, then you are going to struggle to sleep tonight. So then I say, well, what can I do to limit that? Okay, I'll start with a side salad. Then I'll eat that thing. I'll ask for sweet potato fries instead of regular fries, and I'll keep my dessert smaller. And those little changes mean that I can still enjoy myself, but then tonight I won't struggle with my sleep like I would have had I gotten the regular potatoes and I didn't have the salad and I ate the big dessert. So these are nice. These are like functional tips that you can take on board.
Zach, I was watching
Bless you.
Professor of Food on YouTube or whatever, and he said when you're chopping up vegetables, leave them for 10 minutes before you put them into a pot or whatever you do.
Mm-hmm.
And there were specific reasons why you should do this, which I've now forgotten.
Okay.
But I mentioned it to the missus, and you looked a little disbelieving, didn't you?
Okay.
Have you heard this one?
I haven't, but I'm gonna have
So
to.
your mushrooms and your carrots and
So what, you chop it up and then you just leave it?
Just leave them, walk away for 10 minutes,
Interesting.
then come back. And it struck me, partly the same as rinsing your rice, which thanks to which I now do.
Nice.
I have basmati rice and
Nice.
I rinse it.
Good for you.
Yeah, but this 10-minute rule, I
Nice.
haven't heard this one.
Okay, I'll have to look into that. I've never heard of that myself.
Put it in your next book.
I will. That will be the entire subject of it, isn't it? Okay. Before I move forward, are we happy with this? Any questions at all? Are we good to go? With that, we can then, the next things that we're going to learn about, you can add to this. So we'll throw it together.
Can I just ask, when
Yeah.
you talk about timing,
Yes.
I can never eat in the mornings.
Okay.
I just don't have the appetite to have breakfast. Does that make a difference?
It can do, but it doesn't necessarily mean that it's bad. Because personally, I don't like eating in the morning, hence why you'll always see me with some kind of drink in the morning time. Excuse me. So you just got to think about what your preferences are. So if your preference is to eat later, in that case, you need to consider what the first thing is that you're eating that day. Because ultimately, when your stomach is empty, things digest quicker. So if the first thing I'm eating, let's say, is a couple of biscuits, those are going to digest so quickly, whereas if I had eaten something beforehand, then that wouldn't have been a problem as much. The other thing to consider is that when you haven't eaten for a longer period of time, usually we're then hungrier upon eating for the first time that day. So that's another thing you could think about. But, you know, some people have an issue with people skipping breakfast or skipping meals. I just think you got to find out what works for you. And if skipping breakfast but eating, you know, X, Y, and Z for lunch intentionally works for you, I'd say that's fine. Because I also don't want you to have to, like, force feed yourself.
I take my breakfast to work.
Oh, nice.
My desk sort of about 9:30, 10.
Nice.
And I'm sort of happier then.
Nice. What do you put in your overnight oats?
I put in sesame seeds, chia seeds, and then I put in a spoonful of kefir, yogurt, do natural, like a yogurt or a fire, something like that. And then I do blueberries, raspberries, strawberries.
Nice.
Cut some nuts and some eggplants.
That's probably the healthiest breakfast I've heard of.
Wait for the Mars
I actually got that recipe from the British Heart Foundation.
Oh, nice.
I thought that was a really good.
Yeah, and that's got
everything in it.
I was going to say that has literally everything in it. I'm sure you feel good after
I
that.
do, yeah.
I also imagine that lasts you a while.
It's really funny because obviously learning from the course, this kind of stuff, I used to just eat fruit and yogurt for breakfast. But I'd get to work and then there'd be like the chocolate biscuits there and I'd be thinking, this is empty calories. So I changed it, did a bit of research, changed it. And I used to eat my lunch about 1 and I'm eating my lunch at about 2 because I'm still hungry.
Nice. Yeah.
So, yeah, it does work.
That's a good.
Sorry,
Go for it.
overnight oats as well. If you use frozen berries,
Use them as well.
yeah, and then all
When
the
I'm out of
juices,
fruit, I use one. All the juices
all
go
the
into the
juices
yogurt
go
stuff,
in and
yeah,
it's
Nice.
Really soaks up
They're
the
really
yolks as well,
nice.
which
Nice.
is quite nice.
Nice. I'm gonna have to try that. I think that sounds really good. I like overnight oats. Sometimes the consistency of oats like that doesn't really.
I really don't like sloppy food, so
Yeah.
I'm really careful about what I
Got you.
eat. Sometimes I'll add a bit of milk, sometimes I don't.
Yeah, got you.
It depends on how.
Sometimes I prefer eating oats like cereal.
I don't like cereal, so
Ah, fair.
I don't like cereal,
Yeah.
so I'll just eat like a big box, a cardboard box.
But no, I think that sounds really good. I think that sounds good. Okay, so let's move forward to protein. A much more simple topic, less nuanced, if you ask me. We need protein to repair the body and the brain every single day because every day you are using all of this and this all needs repairing. Even if you don't feel like you've done all that much today. You know, if you've done some reading, you've gone for a walk, maybe you've gone and done a bit of exercise, like your body and brain need repairing still. And if we don't eat enough protein and we're not getting enough of that repair and that maintenance, well then what's going to happen over time is that we are going to start feeling the kind of degradation. So we need a lot of protein. And in fact, you might actually feel better for eating more protein because I typically find that most people don't really eat enough of it. I've been trying to eat more protein myself. I was trying to figure out ways of getting more protein into my diet that didn't involve, you know, like protein shakes and stuff. But I was just really struggling, especially because, like I said, I don't like eating in the morning. So I found a particular company that I really quite like, and they make a very plain, simple, no added ingredients, no GMO, blah, 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 all that stuff. And that's what I've been having, and it's been making a very big difference. My recovery has been better. I've been feeling stronger. I've, touch wood, not been getting injured quite as much. So it's been making a very big difference for me. I imagine it would make a big difference for you as well. Plus, we add more protein to the meal, and suddenly your blood sugar is a lot more stable as well. So that's another benefit of adding more protein. 2 to 3 portions per day is ideal. If that portion was a piece of meat, you know, in your meal, a couple of eggs in your breakfast, and maybe a handful of nuts throughout the day, that could be enough. Maybe a bit more in the third meal would do you good. But either way, you get the idea. Eating a variety of proteins is very important. The protein is the building block for the body. Amino acids are known as the building block of the protein. And the type of protein we have will dictate what type of amino acids are inside of the protein. We ideally want all of the amino acids we can get. And there are 9 essential ones that the body needs that the body cannot make itself. So there are certain foods which have all of them, and I'll show you which ones those are. We want to think about processed meats, processed proteins generally, but especially processed meats. So when I say that, what kind of foods pop to your mind? Ham, yeah, that's a big one. Sausages is another one. Bacon is a big one. You know, and then you can get your chicken nuggets and just all that stuff, right? We'll go into processed foods a little bit more in the next session when we come back. But for the time being, you know what kind of foods I'm talking about. In those foods, we are more likely to find additives, more salt, more sugar potentially, and more saturated fat. Lastly, oily fish. Do any of you have a decent amount of oily fish? Yeah?
I'm just wondering what, like, I know the obvious oily fish, and I just can't
No?
deal with that at all.
That's fair.
Is salmon anywhere?
Salmon's on the list. Yeah?
Okay.
Yeah, salmon's on the
And
list.
it doesn't have to be in a tin in oil.
No,
But
no.
it can be just the fresh salmon.
Yeah, you could have the fresh salmon, you could have smoked salmon, you could have raw salmon.
Okay, that's good.
Yeah, does that make you feel better? Yeah. But no, that's completely fine. And you could have the tinned if you fancied it, but the fresh is nicer. Frozen as well, even if you have the frozen, it still has the benefits. So, but if you either don't eat fish or the idea just doesn't appeal to you, or you don't find yourself eating as much, sometimes the capsules that you get can make a good alternative, although I would make sure that you're getting it from a trusted source. Maybe ask your local pharmacy or GP or like Holland and Barrett to recommend one. And some people don't get along with the gel capsules, so some people drink. I don't fancy that one myself. However, chia seeds, flax seeds, and walnuts contain the same healthy fat that we are getting from the oily fish, so those could make a good alternative. And if you're already putting them in your breakfast or whatever, you're doing yourself good. So let me show you some different proteins. We have what are known as incomplete proteins and complete proteins. So incomplete proteins, these are ones that contain amino acids, but not all of the essential amino acids that your body requires. These ones do. So typically we get more complete proteins from animals, so meat and dairy and eggs and fish and stuff like that. But we also do get them in soy products, quinoa, chia seeds, and buckwheat. So if, let's say, you don't have a lot of animal products generally, and most of your protein is coming from this side, well then including maybe some of this could do you good. One thing to pay attention to though is not everybody gets along with soy. So I would just pay attention to how it makes you feel physically. With me, like I like soy, so for example, I really like edamame beans, which is just like baby soy beans, whatever. But I couldn't eat it regularly because I know that it doesn't make me feel great. So that's something to think about.
Also, if you've had any form of estrogen-positive cancer,
Yeah.
you need to avoid the soy foods.
Because they can have an effect on your
Stop some of the
estrogen.
medication working.
Yeah, absolutely. But with that in mind, this hopefully gives you a few things that you might want to, you could add a bit more variety here and there. You could add make a couple of adjustments. Do any of you see yourselves making a few swaps based on what you've got here? Cool. Cool.
You know, with dairy products,
Yes.
if you have almond milk, that doesn't have any calcium in it, does it?
It can if it's fortified with calcium.
So it needs to be fortified with calcium.
Yeah. With almond milk, though, you're probably not going to find very much protein, whereas the true dairy product, you will. So that's another thing that you could think about.
What if you can't tolerate?
Well, it depends what the reason is. If you're lactose intolerant, you can get the lactose-free dairy products, and they actually are quite effective. They add the lactase enzyme to it, which is what your body lacks, which is why you can't digest it, and that can help. The other thing that you could do is you could actually take lactase tablets. So lactase is spelled Lactase. Yep. And if you take a lactase tablet, you will be able to digest the dairy better. That's what my dad does because he's lactose intolerant. But if we go out to a restaurant and he wants to have a dessert or something, he'll pop 2 of them and then he'll eat it. So that's what he does.
My sister can't have any dairy products at all, any cheese, nothing, because it brings on migraines.
Ah, yeah.
So she can't have any of that.
Yeah.
And that's why she went over to oat milk.
Yeah, that makes me sad for her. I love dairy products. I'm a big milk drinker. I get that reaction a lot. I used to have just a glass of milk for breakfast, and my friend called me a child for a little bit.
That turns my stomach just listening to that.
Yeah.
Milk is just
Fair.
That sounds like
It's very polarizing, I find.
I had to drink it at school.
Right. No, I love milk. I find this is where it's interesting when you get onto the topic of what foods work for you, because for me, it's like I've gone through periods where I've gone on dairy and then off dairy, and I find that I operate better, like physically and mentally operate better when I'm drinking dairy products. No, when I'm having dairy. It's really interesting. Anyway, there's protein for you. Are we happy with that? Have we got a better understanding? Okay. Let's go on to fats. So cholesterol and fat. When I say cholesterol, do you think good or bad? When I say fat, do you think good or bad?
Very bad.
Okay. In reality, they're both kind of neutral. And the reason I say that is because they both have just different jobs to do around the body. They both have functions to complete. So for example, they are both involved in hormone production, in cell function, in digestion, and in the immune system. And there are other things that they do as well. Cholesterol and fat are both these kind of waxy substances. And like I said, I kind of think of it like a handyman. They've just got jobs to do around the body. The difference really is that cholesterol is not a fuel source, whereas fat is. So fat can be burnt up inside of the body and used, whereas cholesterol can't. It can only be transported. Now, do any of you know how cholesterol is transported around the body?
Doesn't it cling to something in your bloodstream?
That's true. What did you say?
In the bloodstream, I imagine.
That's true as well. It clings. That's also true. It clings to lipoproteins. So lipoproteins are essentially a bundle of fat and protein and cholesterol. And this is how cholesterol moves around the body. Otherwise, it can't go anywhere. It has to bind together to create this lipoprotein. So because of that, I think of it like a cargo ship. The cargo ship takes the cholesterol and transports it around the body to where it needs to go. Then we've got the different types of lipoproteins. So have you heard of HDLs and LDLs? So HDLs are typically the ones that your doctor is going to say to you, that one you want to be higher, and LDLs, we want that to be typically lower. The reason for that is because both of these, like I said, they both take cholesterol around the body. The difference really is that one of them can damage the body, whereas the other one can help improve it. So HDLs, they take that cholesterol and they transport it around the body to where it needs to go, no problem. And then when it's done, it gets recycled and that's it. LDLs, they will transport that, the other benefit of HDLs is that they will also clean away some of the plaque that develops inside of the blood vessels. So they'll clean the actual area. Whereas the LDLs, they will cause more plaque to develop because what happens is they cause an inflammatory response inside of the blood vessels, and that causes more plaque to build up. So that's really the main issue. Imagine that cargo ship going down a little canal and damaging the edges. That damage is going to cause more plaque. Whereas this one is going to go through and clean away all the plaque. That's kind of the way I envision it inside of my head. Does that analogy make sense? Okay, so really what we want are foods that will increase this and decrease this. The way we get that is we start to include more of these, we're wary of these, and less of those. That's how we want to break that down. The green ones typically will help us to increase our HDL level and decrease our LDL level. So we've got, your typical nuts and seeds and avocado and oils, peanut oil, peanuts, peanut butter, almonds, pecans, cashews, hazelnuts, all those good good things. Flaxseed oil, soybean oil, edamame, oily fish, like we said before, chia seeds, walnuts, all that good stuff. So you're already including a lot of this stuff.
I actually took a photograph of that last time, typed it up and stuck it on a cup.
Nice, good.
I look at that every day.
Good. And that will be doing you good because it makes you more aware, it gives you that understanding.
Totally avoid those last two columns.
And you don't like dairy, so it's doing you even easier. Yeah. So the saturated, the reason why I've put that in amber is because we don't want to have too much, but there are benefits to be had. You know, like I said, the dairy products, we've got the protein, we do have the fat, it's an energy source, there are vitamins and minerals and calcium and all that good stuff. But again, I just don't want to have too much. If I'm having, you know, a block of cheese a day, I could most definitely cut back. But if I'm not having any, maybe that's something that I could potentially add, or maybe a calcium fortified alternative, you know.
Tiny cheese balls are quite good to stick in.
Yeah.
There's about 6 grams of protein in that.
Yeah.
That's quite good.
Yeah. And that would keep you fuller for longer and all that.
Yeah.
And then these ones, the trans fats, the ones that we want to have less of. Typically, so there are two different types. You've got industrially produced trans fats, and then you've got natural ones. Industrially produced ones come about during the cooking process. Typically, when we are cooking vegetable oils at very high temperatures repeatedly, that's when we get more of those trans fats. We also find them in like pastries and biscuits and cakes and stuff like that. The naturally occurring ones we get in meat and dairy products, but in very small amounts, and they are typically less problematic than the others.
What about low-fat products? So you can get, skim milk, low-fat cheese, low-fat yogurts,
Yeah.
things like that. Does that make a difference?
It can do. I mean, in which case you are just having less of the fat, which could be good cholesterol-wise for certain people. It won't fill you up as much. And what's the other drawback of some of those products? They might have more sugar.
The yogurts are really high in sugar.
Yeah. They might have sugar added to it. They might have additives put in there, sweeteners, thickeners, emulsifiers, gums, all kinds. So that's really the benefit and the drawback that you get there. But is that a good distinction that we've got here, a good selection?
It seems to counterbalance what you've said. You know, like, you're saying that we should eat meat and milk and all those sorts of things. Yet here, in the trans fats, they're not a good idea.
This is true. Well, I put that there more for the nuance part of it, but in reality, the small amount of trans fats that we do get in the meat and dairy is rather minimal. Saturated fat is more the issue when it comes to the meat and the dairy products, but that's why that balance is so important, because there are benefits to be had from all of these foods, but we just need to know when we're tipping the balance too far in one way. Like if I'm not eating enough meat or if I'm not eating enough of that food, I might not be getting enough protein, I might not be getting enough iron, I might not be getting enough calcium. But if I eat too much, then my cholesterol could be a problem. So it's all about that balance at the end of the day. But if I do find myself eating quite a lot of meat and dairy, I could then say, okay, well, I'm going to add more chia seeds to my breakfast, more walnuts to my lunch, and more avocado to my dinner in order to balance that out as well. So there are different ways that you could kind of approach that.
When my husband was in hospital, he shocked me. I was told to don't bring any healthy stuff. I had to take in everything that we would consider unhealthy. So it was like white bread. I had to make him fatty foods and everything to build him back up again.
Oh, to give him, to put on weight, you mean?
To put on weight, to do,
Yeah.
and they didn't care what it was. They said, bring anything, and it shocked me because I thought, well, surely I should be giving him healthy
Yeah.
stuff.
I mean, that's an interesting bit of advice, but that is another thing to consider, that the calorie-dense food will then help me to put on weight and stuff like that. So yeah, there's that too. So yeah, but overall though, again, there's all that balance. The other thing to consider here is that on this side, I've included a lot of oils, which these days would be considered kind of bad. So seed oils these days, nut oils, stuff like that. Because of how processed they are and because of the composition of omega-3 and omega-6 and whatever inside, they're not deemed as being very good. However, what I would say is you got to A, find what you like, B, what you can afford, because olive oil is ridiculous these days, and C, what are you using it to make? Like, what are you doing with it? Which brings me to this point. When we are cooking, we want to be aware of how hot the temperature of the oil is getting, or how high the temperature of the oil is getting. Reason why is because as soon as the oil begins to smoke, that's a sign that it is losing its integrity. It's now becoming more toxic and more carcinogenic. So for me, what I like to do is I heat the oil, and as soon as I see a couple little bubbles, I go, okay, time to add it, because not long after that, it's going to begin to smoke, and I want to get it just before that point. What you could do is you could have yourself olive oil, which you put on like something raw, you know, like you dip bread in it or you put it on a salad. And then rapeseed oil you use to make a stir fry, because rapeseed oil typically goes to a higher temperature before it begins to smoke. So that could be something that you do. You could think about kind of mixing the two. I've got a really nice olive oil my friend got me from Greece, and I don't cook with that one, or at least if I do, I keep it very low temp. But like if I'm having something raw, I'll put that on it, which is quite nice. So that's another thing that you could think about. But are we happy with the fats side of things? Cool. Okay, we're nearing the end. We've got a couple little things to go through. Fibre. Fibre is a big one. I'm trying to increase my fibre intake at the moment. I kind of fell off it a little bit where I've been having these shakes. I know I need to go back to blending my shakes again and making them with oats and chia seeds and stuff like that. I need to get back in the swing of doing that. Eating more fibre helps reduce blood sugar spikes, improves digestion, improves gut health, also reduces the risk of bowel cancer, reduces issues like hemorrhoids. Like it's a really big thing to consider. We also want to consider eating it regularly, so with every meal that we're having, ideally. What I like to say is that we want to think about variety and quantity mainly. So if I can add more fibre to the meal, that would do me good. If we're talking about the portion plate, does anybody remember how big a portion? Yeah, or half the plate, ideally. Yeah, so I could have half the plate of veg, or you know, I have a quarter plate of veg and then I have some fruit afterwards and some nuts, and that kind of adds it up. Variety is incredibly important because we get different benefits from the different type of fibrous foods that we have. So like we were just talking about, I could have more of the nuts and the seeds, have the fiber, get the protein plus the healthy fat, plus I start adding more fruit and veg that I like, you know, what ones did you say?
Carrots, cauliflower.
Nice. So then I'm also getting different vitamins and minerals all at the same time, and that's all going to help me to improve my gut health and the lot. It's all just going to do me good. They say eat a rainbow, and they are not referring to Skittles in that case. That is a good variety of different colors. Plus, I don't have it with me, but there is a color wheel that you can look at with the different colors for fruits and vegetables and what the benefits are of the colors of the fruit and veg that you're having, which I think is really cool. I'll try and find that at some point and show you. But fiber is a big one. It doesn't have to be extreme, just different types. And it may not be something that you typically expect. Go for it.
We were taught that dark fruit is good for the brain.
Ah, interesting. I need to learn that. I need to learn the different. See, this is why the next book I want to be about vitamins and minerals and that stuff, so I can learn about it myself. Okay, I'm having a meal. Instead of having the rice, I could have the brown rice, or you know what? If I want a bit more fiber, I start having the bulgur wheat, for example. I'm making a meal. I add a little bit of, I add some lentils to it. Instead of having crisps, I have myself some popcorn. When I'm having potatoes, I leave the skins on. When I'm making my breakfast, I add some avocado and spread it on my toast instead of the butter. You take your pick how you do it, but the benefit of these are often that they overlap with the other things that we've already looked at. So now all of these, well, at least in comparison to other things, like the banana is still higher GI in comparison to the blueberry, but in comparison to the sweets, it's lower GI, right? So overall, these are still lower GI foods, which can help me improve my digestion and my cholesterol and my blood sugar and my So are you seeing anything there that you could add yourself? a little bit more of maybe. And of course, there are other foods which contain fiber. This is just a little selection that I put together.
Does new potato have more fibre than
It's because, yeah, older potatoes, proportionally, because there's more skin in comparison to the white bit, fleshy bit. Yeah.
What about cereals like bran flakes and things like that?
You just got to look at the label. And I tell you what we're going to do in the next session is we'll go into more the practical applications. We'll do the food labels again. And then the difference between this one and when we've done it in the past is we'll go online and we will actually go through like Tesco online and we'll go through some packaging and we'll go through some labels. So if you have any products, you can either bring it in or we can look it up and then we can find specific swaps that you could make that you might be happy with. And then cereal is a big one because we can find a lot of cereal which maybe I don't want to have as much of, but then there might be that one version that you're like, oh, that's actually perfect. So we'll have a little look at that.
When you've got bananas and grapes, so I'm diabetic, and I'm not allowed to have bananas and grapes because of the high sugar content. So,
Well, see, this is part of the that's actually something you hear very frequently. Don't have bananas, don't have grapes. But if you like bananas and you like grapes, also, you know, the banana, you get potassium and that's important, and the fiber and all that. For you, if you did want to have a banana, maybe having that for dessert could be good, or maybe if I have a banana with some yogurt and maybe with some seeds in there and maybe I put some oats in there, that would be better. So using the variety and the timing and that stuff. Yeah.
Would it not be better if you meshed it up and put it into like a banana bread or something like that? Is that not?
I suppose it depends what else you put in the banana bread.
The oats would then counterbalance the banana.
Yeah, that's true. That's true. I like that idea. I like that. I love banana bread, so I would most, no? Okay, we're getting there. Salt. Salt consumption globally is double what it should be. Does anybody remember how many grams of salt is recommended as a guideline daily? 6. And yes, 6 grams, which is a teaspoonful. So a teaspoon a day maximum is recommended. That doesn't mean that we have to have that much. It also doesn't mean that if you go over one day that it's the end of the world. But ideally, we would want to keep that under that 6 grams on a daily basis. And it was funny, I was having a conversation with my friend the other day. We were in a shop together. And he was looking at something, and I was curious what it was that was drawing him to that particular food. Because for me, it's very, you know, I'm very particular about what it is that I'm looking for. And he picked it up and he was like, oh, well, this, and this. But I never look at any of that. And all of that was the numbers and the ingredients. So then I said to him, well, let's say you picked up an item and that item had 3 grams of salt. Would you think that that was a lot or a little? And he said, well, a little. Because 3 grams doesn't sound like a lot, but proportionally, 3 grams of salt is half your daily intake of salt. So if you frame it like that, that's why the understanding side of it is so important, right? But I thought that was very interesting because he wouldn't have even thought about it. So you could start looking at the labels, and again, in the next one, we'll do that a little bit more. But for the time being, looking at the things that you have on a daily basis, the sauces, the seasonings, go have a look at your seasonings, you might be surprised. And then obviously the salt that we add ourselves. Typically, personally, I do like to use a less refined form of salt. I like to use like, you know, a sea salt or a pink Himalayan salt or something like that. Mainly because it is less processed and it does have a little bit more in terms of minerals. But realistically, I just prefer it. However you are getting your salt, how much you're having, that's the important factor to consider. Do any of you feel like you could adjust your salt intake?
I don't think it at all.
Okay.
We don't add any
I don't
in the
know.
family to meals
Okay.
because we know there's salt
Yeah.
in other things.
Yeah.
Hidden salt in what you're eating.
Yeah. Okay. Well, even if you don't add salt, I'd still pay attention to the things that you're having on a daily basis. Even like, you know, canned soup can have far more than you'd imagine. Drinks, snacks, all kinds. So have a little look.
Yeah, and I think when you talk about balance, like at one point I had to increase my salt because I had low blood pressure.
Right.
So I was actually having to eat
Yeah.
some of a spoon and
Yeah.
drink more. I kind of gone too far the other way.
Right.
So, yeah, that's
Finding that
the
balance.
thing we talk about.
Yeah. God's favorite. See. I want to be able to increase my salt intake. All right. Last one. Hydration. How many of you feel like you could probably do with drinking a little bit more water?
Yeah.
From today, that's something that you could easily go out and incorporate, but of course, setting that habit and doing it repetitively, that's the more important part. I find that a lot of people, A, don't remember to drink, and B, which probably links, because you might not get very thirsty. I find that people say to me like, oh, if I don't get thirsty, why do I need to drink? And really the answer is because by the time you get thirsty, your body is now asking you for water. It probably would have been doing better had we been hydrating progressively, continuously. So very important for the entire body. A, actually quite important for blood sugar. Does anybody remember why?
I should know because I do the 2 litres a day.
Good.
For that reason,
Good.
keeping it low.
Yes. So essentially, when your blood sugar goes high, your body flushes it out by making you go to the toilet. So that is one of the mechanisms that the body uses in order to keep the blood sugar stable. So your blood sugar is too high, well, I'm going to go to the toilet and I'll flush out some of that excess sugar. So if you are dehydrated, your body is not able to use that mechanism in order to flush out the excess sugar. Therefore, staying more hydrated can improve the stability of that blood sugar and making sure that things are flushed out properly. But that also applies to toxins. It makes sure that the body has, well, firstly, water makes up a substantial percentage of your blood and actually enables things to travel and transport around, make sure that the cells are getting the nutrients and getting rid of waste products and all that good stuff. So very important. And also, even in just a day-to-day sense, if I start having a headache, I go, okay, I need to go and drink more. It's easy to be like, oh, I need the paracetamol first, which maybe you do. But actually, maybe a big glass of water and progressively drinking more for the rest of the day could do you better.
It was like an affect your blood pressure because I've been
That too.
to doctor's surgery and they said to me, you drunk this morning? I've gone,
Yeah.
no, because I knew I was going, right, go and have a drink because then you'll get through
Yeah.
really.
That's another thing when you go for a blood test.
Yeah.
If you haven't drunk enough, they'll have a drop
Yeah.
in your blood.
Yeah. And then we want to think about how much we're drinking. So typically the recommendation for the average person is 1.5 to 2 litres per day. If you're a giant, it's probably more. If you're not, it's probably less. But even still, you could probably do with the average amount, typically. But if at the moment I'm managing 1 cup of water a day, a second cup will do me good. I don't have to just immediately make the jump to having 2 litres. But for reference, this is 1. So 1.5 to 2 of these a day will do you good. You might find that you drink more. I find that I probably fill this up 6 times a day, something like that. But I just drink a lot. In fact, what's ironic is that when I was young, I don't know if I told you this, I was tested for type 1 because I just drink so much water. I can always do with the drink. But I think it's genetic because my dad and brother are the same. So it's very interesting. But anyway, it doesn't have to be plain water. Plain water works, but it could be the water that we have in tea and coffee. A lot of the time you might hear that people say, oh, tea and coffee doesn't count because there's a diuretic effect of tea and coffee. But supposedly it doesn't matter. So the advice typically these days is that tea and coffee does contribute to your overall water intake, especially if we're having more like herbal teas and stuff like that. It could be soup, it could be infused water, if you put fruit or veg or, cucumber or lemon or something into the water. Also, certain fruits contain water as well. So all I want you to think about is, am I staying hydrated enough? Excuse me, when was the last time that I had a drink? What did I drink? Could I do with drinking a little bit more? If I can sip throughout the day, that will do me good. I find that people who set reminders, if you don't remember to drink very frequently, having an alarm maybe every hour to just have a sip could be quite useful. Or maybe you have like a post-it note on your fridge, sip, underline, that could be cool. The other thing I also recommend is that if you get a bottle that has the time of day stamped on it,
That's what I've got.
yeah, I find that's really quite useful for some people. So that's something you could do as well. But that all, well actually, are we happy with water for now? That all is my advice for keeping the body in good stead. Like that's a good overview of what everybody as a human being should be doing to keep their body stable. So if there's anything from today that we looked at that maybe that we're tipped in a direction that is unhelpful, tipping it back a little bit can make a really big difference. It doesn't need to be major, little changes. Type of carbohydrates you eat will affect your energy levels and how likely you are to snack. So not just thinking about blood sugar, but on a practical level, how much energy am I going to have? How full am I going to be? How much longevity am I going to get from this meal? And can I plan my day around it? That's really cool. Protein is important for maintenance of your body. Eat a variety of proteins 2 to 3 times per day. And now you've got a better understanding of ones that give us everything that we need and maybe the ones that we could supplement in. Eating a healthy balance of fats, focusing on eating more unsaturated fats ideally, so those green ones. And then we could think about cooking practices and stuff like that. Eat a variety of fibrous foods throughout the day. Be aware of your intake of salt and the impact that too much can have on your health. And then lastly, aim to drink 1.5 to 2 liters of water per day. And that is it's kind of my summary of what all people who have a human body should be doing as a baseline. Of course, you might have particular needs and requirements that change your diet a little bit in comparison to the person next to you, but every human should probably follow this guideline. And if there's something that's tipped a little bit, that's okay. Little adjustment, tip it back a little bit, and your body will adjust accordingly. But that's my.
So if you want to lose weight,
Yeah.
what do you do?
Well, we're going to talk about that more in the next one. But there are different methods that work for different people. For some people, it's about including more of the variety, because if I'm including a variety, then I'm going to get fuller sooner. I won't be as inclined to snack afterwards. That works well. For other people, the water helps. So if you were to drink a big glass of water before you eat, that can help you eat less, but that works for some people better than other people. Portion size is probably one of the more important ones, I would say, and we're going to talk about that more in the next one, but using your hands as a guide, maybe using a smaller plate size, looking at maybe not stacking it as high. so yeah. We could use a smaller plate, but just go upwards. So that's something you could think about too. But we'll get more into the practical applications of the weight loss and weight gain and stuff in the next one. Do you have any other questions for me?
I was just wondering, the protein shake that you're talking about,
Yeah.
what is it called? Like my daughter in particular is trying to increase her protein.
Okay, so the company is called Naked Whey. It's on Amazon. They've got the unflavored version and then they've got flavored ones. I do have the chocolate one, but it doesn't have any added sugar and it's made with cacao. I think it's pretty good. It's nice, and it's got no additives in it, no sweeteners, no GMO, organic, all that.
So that's the brand in
Bollocks.
general.
Yeah,
Whey, W-A-Y or W-H-E-Y?
that one, WHEY. Yeah. And yeah, it's just a good product. I find that I quite like it, and it's definitely helping me physically for sure.
Has that got additives? If we get one of those, have we got to look out for sugar and salt, or is it?
Well, with protein shakes, the trouble is that they often add stuff to enhance it. So for example, you know, if they haven't added sugar, they probably have added sweeteners. And for me especially, but I know for a lot of people, it doesn't interact very well down here. Whereas a little bit of sugar, you know, I need to make sure I'm balanced, but it's not going to affect me as negatively as sweeteners will. Whereas for other people, they would rather have the sweetness than the sugar, which is fair enough, you know. Okay, before we finish up, firstly, it's very, very lovely to see you all again. And have you enjoyed this one? Yeah. Cool. So some of you, you've probably heard me talk about a lot of this stuff before, but I think a recap is always good. And, you know, in context with the other things we've looked at today, it's good to kind of consolidate that information. But as we go forward, there will be topics that maybe you've heard more of, maybe you've never heard of, but I've got loads of topics for us going forwards. And again, we'll have a new topic every month. So the next one we'll do a continuation from this. And then afterwards, we're going to go into other stuff. So we'll start going into sleep again. We'll go into the stress side again. We're going to start talking about other things like depression, which we haven't really covered in these sessions before. I think that would be good, especially, well, for you and then probably for people around you, I imagine. Before we finish up, this is, so you saw it says final one in here. This is the last one I had made before I made the big order and set up the distribution. So that's now set up. This is going on Amazon. I mean, it might be up now. I need to check. It probably won't be up for at least another 2 or 4 weeks or so, but we're getting there. It is going to be available very soon because I've just made a big order and they've just shipped it. So hopefully it'll be at my house very soon. And we're going to organize a little event here, which will be cool. And then it will still be available like on a Saturday and a Wednesday, but I figured it would be nice for us to have like a little event. I'll sign the books. It'll just be cool. So I'm very excited. If any of you haven't looked yet, I'll leave it over here and you can have a little look at it. But I'm very excited. It'll be cool because all of the, for example, let me just show you this quick because I think you'll like this. All of the things in this link to the seminars. So where are we? So for example, these animations here are the same as what's in here. So you could read this as we're going along, and yeah, I'm very excited. It's going to be cool. So I think that's it for the day. My pleasure. Go for it.
Going back to cholesterol,
Yes.
the HDL are good. So why have we got LDLs?
Well, you know what? Somebody asked me this the other day, and I need to look into it still. I need to learn the benefits of the LDLs more, because they're in there for a reason, but I don't know what the reason is.
It doesn't sound like they do any good.
But I guess that's where that balance comes into it, because there are so many other, like you know, we could say the same, I guess, about most things. Like why do we have blood pressure if it can be a problem, but if it's too low, that can be a problem, right? So it's all about that balance. Yeah, we'll find it out together. Cholesterol tablets work by removing some of the LDLs from the blood. Yeah, I'm pretty sure it like soaks it up almost. It's pretty interesting. Any other?
It's fascinating cholesterol. And high cholesterol as well, because it's the pre-diabetes thing. Pre-diabetes thing, to get that number down is I found relatively easy, but to get your cholesterol down, it's such hard work.
Yeah, cholesterol's a tricky one.
It's just such hard work.
Yeah, cholesterol's tricky. But we're getting there, right? We're getting there. Well, listen, everyone, it's been lovely to see you guys again. If any of you want to stay behind for anything, you're more than welcome. But if you've got to get going, I'll see you at the next one. Good question.